Om Sarashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Parampara. Om. Good. Be seated, please. Parameshvara. Om. Okay, good. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunektu Sahavidyan Karava Vahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvisha vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Very good. Welcome to you all. Welcome also to our many students watching these classes online. Is the recording going okay? Very good. I think you want to start, though, with, anyway, I'll tell you later. We went immediately to the PowerPoint, but we shouldn't go immediately to the PowerPoint. You look at the sequence. Okay, it's not a problem. And we're still learning this new system, which is quite complicated. Okay. We finished our study of the 18th chapter and all preceding chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. We finished the week before last, and then last week we began our study of the Gita Dhyanam, the meditation verses, which are traditionally chanted before recitation of the entire Bhagavad Gita. We studied the first half, the first 5 of those verses. What we'll do today is we'll start by chanting those verses, and then after chanting the first 5 verses, then we'll learn the remaining verses. As always, while I'm chanting, glance down at the meaning, and then repeat after me. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam. Narayanena Swayam. Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina. Vyasena Kratitam Puranam Madhye Mahabharatam. Madhye Mahabharatam. Advaitamrita Varshanim Bhagavatim. Advaitamrita Varshinim Bhagavatim. Ashtadashadhyayanim. Ashtadashadhyayanim. Ambatvamanusandadhami. Ambatvamanusandadhami. Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshanim. Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshanim. Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe. Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe. Pullaravindaya Patat. Pullaravindaya Tapatra Netra. Pullaravindaya Tapatra Netra. Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha. Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha. Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha. Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha. Prapanniparijataya Prapannaparijataya Totra Vetraikapanaye Totra Vetraikapanaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Gitamrtaduhe Namaha Gitamrtaduhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavo Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogdha Gopalanandanaha Dogdha Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdham Gitamritam Mahata Dugdham Gitamritam. Together. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. And that's what we studied last week. We'll continue today. I just hear something odd. What is that? Somebody's hearing aid in this area. Anyway, you can hear the whistling of a hearing aid someplace in this side. Anyway. Okay, so we continue now. Before continuing, there's a couple of questions about the different meters being used. A meter is the number of syllables and often a combination of short and long syllables used in each line. And it's a prerogative of the author. Most of the Bhagavad Gita is written in a very short meter, Anushtubh Chandas, 8 syllables in a line. Some of the verses in the Bhagavad Gita have a longer meter, having 11 syllables in a line, but there are dozens and dozens of meters, well, some of them having many, many, many syllables in a line, and it's up to the author to choose what meter suits his or her purpose. And we can note, though, that shorter meters are fairly restrictive if you want to express something very complicated or something very beautiful. It's not unusual for longer meters to be used, and we'll see some of those longer meters in today's class. The next 2 verses use a poetic device called drishtanta metaphor. In each verse, there are a number of metaphors which are used to describe something very common in poetry, very poetic and very lovely. We'll see that today. The first metaphor describes the battlefield as Rana Nadi. The Nadi, the river of Rana here means battle. The battlefield is compared to a river, and the river, this is not an ordinary river. This is a river with whirlpools and rapids and crocodiles, and it's a pretty scary river. We use a similar metaphor all the time. We talk about samsara sagara. The suffering of worldly life is compared to an ocean. And then these teachings are compared to the boat by which you can cross that ocean of worldly suffering. And we'll see some of the same elements of metaphor in this next verse. Let's see the verse. It's again longer meter. Repeat after me. Bhishmadrona tata jayadrata jala Bhishmadrona tata jayadrata jala Gandhara nilotpala Gandhara nilotpala Shalyagrahavati kripena vahani Shalyagrahavati kripena vahani karnena vela kula Ashwattama vikarna ghora makara Ashwattama vikarna ghora makara Duryodhana vartani Sotirna kalu pandavarananadi Sotirna kalu pandavarananadi Kaivartaka Keshavaha Kaivartaka Keshavaha. Very beautiful poetry that we find in these verses. So the Drishtanta is given part by part, comparing the battlefield to a raging, terrible river. And what are the, starting with the first line, what are the tata, end of the first word? Tata means banks. A river has two banks. What are the banks of this river? Bhishma and Drona. So when you're in the river, you are stuck in between Bhishma and Drona, the two fierce, I won't say that, the two mightiest and the two most senior of all the commanders among the Kaurava side, on the Kaurava side of the battlefield. So they are the leaders. So the leaders of the opposing army form the banks, and then Jayadratha Jala. The waters in that river is Jayadratha. Jayadratha was the king of the kingdom of Sindhu, I think. He was the king. Again, by the way, he was also on a battlefield. If you're the king of a kingdom, you come with your entire army. So Jayadratha comes with his entire army on the side of the Kauravas. Then, in this river, this is a very terrible river, but in this terrible river is a Nilotpala, a lotus. What is a lotus doing in a terrible, frightening river? It's not really a lotus. It's highly deceptive. It's a deceptive lotus, and who is that deceptive lotus? Gandhara is a name for Shakuni. He was the prince of Gandhara and the brother of Gandhari, you'll remember. So Shakuni, who's very deceptive, he is that, it looks like a lotus, not. Okay. Then there are some graha. Graha, a crocodile, that which bites you, is a graha. And grahavati, who are those crocodiles? No, who is the crocodile? Shalya. Shalya was another great king, the king of Madra. He again comes with his own army. He is the general of his own army, also allied with the Pandavas, with the Kauravas. And then there is the flow of this river. By the way, you get the sense that down this river, so many warriors are being carried to their deaths. That's an important part, and we're going to see part of that in the next half of this verse. So the current of that river is carrying warriors to that death, and Vahani, that current is known as Kripacharya, one of the priest and teacher of the clan, who was very intelligent and guiding everyone. And then there are, in that current, there is Vela Akula. Akula means a disturbance of the vela, disturbance of the flow of water, which means waves, turbulence. And the turbulence and waves in this river is known as Karna, the mightiest of the warriors. Then gets worse. Ashwatthama Vikarna Ghora Makara. There are two particularly frightening crocodiles, Ghora Makara. And these two particularly frightening crocodiles are known as Ashwatthama, the son of Drona, and Vikarna, one of Duryodhana's brothers. These are the crocodiles. And what about Duryodhana himself? Duryodhana, Avartani, whirlpool. That's an interesting metaphor because whirlpools draw everything in. Duryodhana was a whirlpool. First and foremost, he drew in his father. Right? Dhritarashtra, he drew his father into that battle. He drew the Pandavas into the battle. He drew Karna. Karna was a noble person, but he drew Karna into all of this battle. So, a very apt illustration to describe Duryodhana as that whirlpool drawing everyone into this terrible current which sweeps all the warriors to their deaths. Then, and all of that is described at the end of the next line, that is the Rana Nadi. That's the basis of this whole metaphor so far. That is the river of the battlefield. That's the first metaphor. Now we have another part of the metaphor. On this river, there's a boat. And that boat is Sa Uttirna. There is a Uttirna Keshavaha. There is a boat, and the Kaivartaka. Kaivartaka usually means fisherman, but here it means boatman. There's no one is going to go fishing in this boat. All you'll catch is crocodiles. So it's not a fisherman here, it's a boatman. So there is a boat, and Sa, that boat, which is Uttirna, which crosses over that river. That boat is the boatman, the Kaivartakaha. The boatman is, of course, Keshava, is Lord Krishna himself. And, that's a connection. So, with Sri Krishna as the boatman, Pandavaihi, by the Pandavas, Sa Rananadi, we have to get the Sanskrit right here. By the Pandavas, Sa Rananadi, that terrible river, Uttirna, was crossed. With Lord Krishna as a boatman, the Pandavas managed to cross that terrible river. And there is the metaphor we saw, the guru in the boat leading you over that samsara sagara. That in many scriptures and commentaries, you find the term jnana plava. Plava means boat. A boat in the form of jnana, wisdom. And that wisdom can both be worldly wisdom and spiritual wisdom. So with worldly wisdom, Sri Krishna guided all of the Pandavas on the battlefield. Then with spiritual wisdom, Sri Krishna guided Arjuna. That's the Bhagavad Gita, as when Sri Krishna imparted those spiritual teachings and enlightened Arjuna right there on the battlefield. So that's the first of two verses with so many metaphors. We have one more similar verse, not similar in its content, but in that it's long meter and lots of metaphor. Let's see that next verse. Parasharyavachasarojamamalam. Parasharyavachasarojamalam. Gitartha gandhotkatam. Gitartha gandhotkatam. Nanakyanaka kesaram. Harikatha. Nanakyanaka kesaram. Harikatha. Sambodhana bodhini. Sambodhana bodhini. Loke sajjana shadpararaharaha. Loke sajjana shadpararaharaha. Pepiyamanam muda. Pepiyamanam muda. Bhuyat bharata pankajam kalimala. Bhuyat bharata pankajam kalimala. Pradvansina shreyase. Pradvansina shreyase. So same meter as the previous one. And here, the metaphor begins, and kind of moves around. Actually, yeah. Every metaphor should have a central idea. And here the central idea is the first two words. Parasharya vachaha. The vachaha, the words. The words of whom? The son of the rishi Parashara is Vyasa, here called Parasharya, which comes from the son of Parashara. So that which comes from Vyasa. The words of Vyasa in the entire Mahabharata, and in particular the words of Vyasa in the Bhagavad Gita. What about those words? So first metaphor is, excuse me, those words are like amalam sarojam. Amalam, very pure, sarojam, lotus, a very pure lotus. And the idea, by the way, if you wonder why is lotus constantly given as a symbol of purity, there are at least two reasons. One is a metaphor given in the Bhagavad Gita itself, and that is a drop of water on the lotus leaf, not on the flower, but on the leaf. That drop of water will not make the leaf wet, but will form a ball and will roll off the leaf. The leaves are waxy. So that's one reason that the lotus leaves are untainted, untouched by that water. The second reason, and perhaps the more basic reason, is the lotus looks so beautiful, floating there on the water. Underneath the water, it has roots, and those roots go down into the muck and mud and slime on the bottom of that pond. So it's have you ever walked in a pond and your feet sink down into that slimy muck? Anyway, it's what it is what it is. The pond is beautiful, but that slimy muck on the bottom is not so desirable. But that is the root of the lotus. So the lotus has its roots in that muck and slime, but then on the surface it is so beautiful. The beauty, and the metaphor is the beauty of the lotus is completely unaffected by the muck and slime down below. So some of the symbolism of the lotus here called Saroja. There are probably, how many words are there in English for lotus? That's it. There are dozens of words in Sanskrit for lotus. Here we have Saroja, Saras, water, ja, that which is born of water. And if you looked, where did we saw before pankaja? Maybe it comes here someplace, I can't see it right away. So, yeah. Anyway, pankaja, that which is ja, born of panka, means that mud and muck at the bottom. And like there are literally dozens of words for lotus as opposed to one in English, lotus. Okay, then next part of the metaphor is the fragrance of that lotus. The gandha utkatam. Utkatam means it's very strong. The very strong gandha, fragrance of that lotus. The lotus, which is the words of Vyasa. The lotus, which is the words of Vyasa, has a beautiful fragrance, and that fragrance is Gita Artha, the meaning of the Bhagavad Gita. So in the whole Mahabharata, in the 84,000 verses of the Mahabharata, the 700-verse section we study as Bhagavad Gita is where the fragrance comes from. You can imagine a huge pond with many lotuses. This particular lotus, the lotus which is a Bhagavad Gita, is more fragrant than any other. That lotus also has, see at the end of the next compound, kesara. Kesara has, again, several meanings, but here it means those things that stick up from the middle of the flower. I think they're called stamen and pistil and all of this stuff. I don't know all these botanical things, but they stick up from the middle of that flower. So, and that's called here kesara. So those filaments which stick up from the center of that fragrant lotus, what are those? Nana akyanaka, the many stories. Nana, many, akyanaka stories. So the many stories of the Mahabharata are the stamen, the filament sticking up from this beautiful lotus, which is the words of Vyasa. And those words of Vyasa, Hari Katha Sambodhana Bodhitam. Just trying to see how we can make this back into the metaphor. And I think it's a little less metaphoric and more literal, and that is that the words of Vyasa, which are like a beautiful fragrant lotus, those words of Vyasa, Bodhitam, the end of that long compound, they make known, they reveal Sambodhana, the inner meaning, Hari Katha, of the words of Lord Krishna. So in those words, through the words of Vyasa, that's interesting. Through the words of Vyasa, the Sambodhana, this is the inner meaning, is made evident. So you've heard me say before that the Bhagavad Gita is not a transcript of the dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna. They didn't speak in Sanskrit, and they certainly didn't speak in verses. So these are verses composed by Vyasa, based on what Vyasa heard taking place in the chariot. And this confirms it and says that it is the words of Vyasa which reveal that dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna on the battlefield. Then the second half of this, Loke Sajjana Shadpadaira Aharaha Pepiyamanam Buddha. Okay, these lotuses, I don't know if lotus gives off nectar. Many flowers do. I don't know about lotus. But here, and the metaphor may be a little extended here. Imagine a flower, like a lotus, but a flower that gives nectar. And that nectar, of course, we have the In fact, I just did a video a couple of months on that. The very word nectar, both in Greek and in Sanskrit, the word for nectar has its roots in the word meaning immortality. In Greek, nek plus tar is that which is not death. In Sanskrit, mrita, not dead. So we use these words for something sweet, but the root meaning of them both is immortality, which is why we have this concept of the nectar of immortality. The very word nectar means immortality by this etymological trick, as it were. It's like a pun, Sanskrit and Greek pun. Anyway, here, that sweet nectar, the nectar of immortality, in the second line, pepiyamanam. It is constantly being drunk, imbibed, muda, with joy. It's being drunk, it's being imbibed. Loke, in the world, it's being drunk by whom? Well, who comes to that flower for the nectar is bees. And bee in Sanskrit is where am I? Shadjana? I'm sorry, Sadjana, Shadpada. Sadjana, Shadpada. Shadpada is one who has 6 legs. Bees have 6 legs. So Shadpada here means bees. It's a common expression. So the bees, but who are the bees? Sajjana, good people. So this is a metaphor. So the bees that are attracted to the nectar of a flower represent the Sadjana, the good people who are attracted to the nectar of immortality provided through the lotus of the words of Vyasa in the form of the Bhagavad Gita. What a wonderful and elaborate metaphor. And the people who are the bees imbibing this nectar of immortality, they do it ahar again and again every day. They go on. Interesting. Bees go to the flower every day, right? Not just once. And so here it says, good people turn to the Bhagavad Gita. And make a little comment here. Once a week? Uh-oh. So, good people turn to the Bhagavad Gita not only on Saturday mornings, but ahar every single day. All right. And to finish off this metaphor, here's the word pankaja, the other word for lotus. Bhuyat bharata pankaja. The pankaja, the lotus, which is in the form of the bharata. Bharata, of course, means Mahabharata. This lotus, which is in the form of the Mahabharata, which are the words of the Rishi Vyasa, this is prayerful. Bhuyat. May this Mahabharata, this lotus-like Mahabharata, may this Mahabharata be Kalimala Pradwansi. May it be the Pradwansin, the destroyer of Kalimala, the suffering associated with this Kali Yuga, the suffering of day-to-day life. May this lotus-like Mahabharata be the destroyer of all suffering in worldly life, naha, for us. Shreyase, may it be for our ultimate benefit. May it lead us to Shreyas as a synonym for moksha. May this lotus of the Mahabharata lead us to moksha. Okay, next. This one will sound familiar to you, I'm sure. Mukhaṁ karoti vachalam, mukhaṁ karoti vachalam, pangum langhayate girim, pangum langhayate girim, yat kripatamaham vande, tat kripatamaham vande, paramananda madhavam, paramananda madhavam. Several classes ago, we talked about stuti, praise, using the poetic device that in English we call hyperbole. Hyperbole in poetics means intentional exaggeration. You see that on advertisements on TV. No one says their product is good. They all say their product is the best. Intentional exaggeration, and that's what we see. That's a poetic device used in this verse, where Krishna is said, karoti. What does Krishna do? Krishna mukam karoti. He makes those who are mukha dumb. Dumb in the sense of not being able to speak. So he makes the dumb vachalam, eloquent. Not just makes them speak, makes them speak eloquently. And not only that, Krishna langhayate, he causes to cross pangum, those who are lame, those who can't walk. Krishna langhayate, he makes them cross girim, tall mountains. He makes the lame cross tall mountains. Yat kripa, through his blessings, through his grace. Tam, unto that Krishna, whose blessings make the dumb speak eloquently, whose grace makes the lame cross the mountains. Tam, unto him, ham aham vande. I worship that Sri Krishna who is Parama Ananda Madhavam. Madhava is a common name for Sri Krishna, and it literally means the one who is sweet. Isn't it interesting that in American English, sweetie is a very common term of affection, sweetie. Nice. The one who is sweet, the one who is pleasant, the one you want to be with, right? That's the idea, that the person you call sweetie is someone you love to hang around with, to use the American English. So here, Sri Krishna is Madhava, the sweet one, the one who the gopis love to hang out with. And in poetics, we are all gopis. So all of us are like the gopis who love to be with that sweet one. But here, this sweetness is not ordinary sweetness. This sweetness is Parama Ananda, the highest bliss. Highest bliss. Why? Sri Krishna, if Sri Krishna were only a goherd, whatever. I just mixed this. First part is Sanskrit, the second part is English. I have to make up my mind. Either Gopala or cowherd. You can't mix up languages like that, and my mind gets confused. Anyway. If Sri Krishna were only a cowherd, then he would only be attractive to the gopis. But Sri Krishna, as we've seen, is so much more than a Gopala, than a cowherd. He is the teacher of the wisdom found in the Bhagavad Gita, the wisdom that can lead you to moksha, and having gained moksha, you find Parama Ananda. Where do you find the Parama Ananda? So Sri Krishna is the source of that Paramananda, but the Sri Krishna who is the source of Paramananda is not in Vrindavan on the in the fields, the Sri Krishna, who is the source of Paramananda, dwells here. So that Paramananda is found in Krishna, but in Sri Krishna, who dwells within you as your true divine nature. Okay, familiar verse. That brings us to the last one, which is also, again, long meter. Oh, that didn't advance. There we go. Let's see this last verse. Yam, get the pitch up a little bit. Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha. Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha. Stunvanti Divyaistavai. Tunvanti Divyaistavai. Vedai Sangha Parakramopanishadar. Vedai Sangha Parakramopanishadar. Gayantiyam Samaga. Gayantiyam Samaga. Dhyana Vastita Tadgatena Manasa. Dhyana Vastita Tadgatena Manasa. Pashyanti yam yoginaha. Pashyanti yam yogino. Yasyantam navidu sura suragana. Yasyantam navidu sura suragana. Devaya tasmai namaha. Devaya tasmai namaha. This is the concluding verse of the Gita Dhyana. We'll start at the beginning. Brahma is the creator. Varuna, god of the waters. Indra, king of the gods. Rudra, Lord Shiva. Marutaha is a group of 49 deities. All of them and more, all of them stunvanti. They all praise. Who do they pray? First word, yam, a pronoun representing Krishna. They all pray to Krishna, divyaihi stavaihi, with divine praises. Ordinary people have ordinary praises, but these gods have divine praises. Not only do the gods pray and praise Sri Krishna, but also pious people and priests. Look at the last line. Samagaha, the ones who recite Samaveda, but really all the Vedas. And the ones who recite the Vedas, what about them? Gayanti, they also sing. They sing the praises they sing yam unto that Sri Krishna. They praise Sri Krishna. How? Vedaihi, through the recitation of the Vedas. They praise Sri Krishna. Reciting the Vedas, sa anga para krama Upanishadaihi. They don't just chant the Vedas, but the Vedas are chanted along with the Anga. There are Vedangas. There are auxiliary texts that go along with the Vedas. There are also varieties of ways of chanting the Vedas. Pada and Krama are two different ways of chanting the Vedas, and the Vedas are also chanted Upanishadaihi along with the Upanishads. Upanishads forming the last part of the Vedas. So this first half, Sri Krishna is praised by the gods in heaven using divine praises. Sri Krishna is praised by pious people through their chanting of the Vedas and all the scriptures associated with the Vedas, including the Upanishads. And finally, in second line of the second part, Yoginaha, the great yogis. What about the yogis? Pashyantiyam. They literally see see Sri Krishna. They reach Sri Krishna. Interesting contrast. So the gods in heaven, they don't reach Sri Krishna. They just praise him. Those who recite the Vedas, they don't see Sri Krishna. They also don't reach him. We're being taught something here, right? And that is, even if you're a god, that doesn't mean you have access to Sri Krishna. And even if you are a pious Brahmana spending your whole day and night chanting the Vedas, even that won't prepare you to see or discover Sri Krishna. Who sees or discovers Sri Krishna? Yoginaha, yogis. Yogis are those who perform meditation and other practices, spiritual practices, which would include everyone in this hall. We are all yogis in that sense. So those yogis who practice meditation, who practice sadhana, and specifically who study the Bhagavad Gita, those yogis, manasa, back up a line, with their minds, they discover Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna is not discovered in Vrindavan, nor is Sri Krishna discovered as Narayana at the bottom of the Milky Ocean. Where is Sri Krishna discovered? As we've seen through the whole Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna is discovered within yourself, manasa, with your mind. They discovered Sri Krishna in themselves with their minds which were tadgatena, which were focused on Sri Krishna, and dhyana, avastita, established in meditation, focused on Sri Krishna's presence within. Those yogis were able to discover Sri Krishna within. Very interesting, the pattern. The gods in heaven didn't see. The Brahmanas chanting the Vedas didn't see. But who saw? The yogis. The ones who meditate, the ones engaged in deeper spiritual practice, including study of the Bhagavad Gita. And we saw actually another reference to the gods. So earlier we had Brahma, Varuna, Indra, Rudra, and the 49 Maruts. Now here at the end of the third line, we have Sura and Asura, Ganaha, the whole group of Suras and Asuras. Suras, the gods, Asura, the anti-gods, so to speak. Demons, we can call them demons. So the gods and the demons, remember, these demons are empowered just as the gods are. They're just as mighty. So the great gods and the great demons, all of them, naviduhu, they could not know the antam, the end, the fullness, in the entirety, yasya, of that Sri Krishna. So once again, even the gods and the demons were unable to know, to discover that Sri Krishna. Only the yogis, the meditators, could discover Sri Krishna within themselves. And tasmai, unto that one, unto Sri Krishna, devaya, unto that divine being, Sri Krishna, namaha, salutations. And with this, the Gita Dhyana comes to an end. And we have some time here at the end of the class. Why don't we go ahead and chant the verses that we've just learned. So starting with the 6th verse, let me get back. This one, right? No, previous. This one, okay? And once again, as I'm chanting, glance down at the translation and then repeat after me. Bhishma Drona Tata Jayadratha Jala, Bhishma Drona Tata Jayadratha Jala, Gandhara Nilotpala, Gandhara Nilotpala, Shalyagrahavati Kripena Vahani. Shalyagrahavati kripena vahani karnena velakula karnena velakula ashwathama vikarna ghora makara ashwathama vikarna ghora makara duryodhana vartani Duryodhana vartani sotirna kalu pandavarananadi sotirna kalu pandavarananadi kaivartaka Keshavaha kaivartaka Keshavaha Parasharyavachasarojamamalam Parasharyavachasarojamamalam Gitartha Gandhotkatam Gitartha Gandhotkatam Nana Kyanaka Kesaram Harikatha Nana Kyanaka Kesaram Harikatha Sambodhana Bodhitam Sambodhita Bodhitam Loke Sajjana Shadpararaharaha Loke Sajjana Shadpararaharaha Pepiyamanam Muda Pepiyamanam Muda Bhuyat Bharata Pankajam Kalimala Bhuyat Bharata Pankajam Kalimala Pradvamsina Shreyase Pradvamsina Shreyase Mukam karoti vachalam Mukam karoti vachalam Pangum langhayate girim Pangum langhayate girim Yat kripatamaham vande Yat kripatamaham vande Paramananda madhavam Paramananda madhavam Yam brahma varunendra rudra marutaha Yam brahma varunendra rudra marutaha Stunvanti divyaistavaihi Stunvanti divyaistavaihi Vedai sangha parakramo panishadar Vedai sangha parakramo panishadar Gayantiyam samaga Gayantiyam samaga Dhyana vastita tadgatena manasa Dhyana vastita tadgatena manasa Pashyanti yam yogino Pashyanti yam yogino Yasyantam navadu sura suragana Yasyantam navadu sura suragana Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha. Coming to the end of that Gita Dhyana just brings back so many nice memories of chanting it with Puja Swami Tadatmananda, my guru, and coming to that conclusion. Very, very beautiful verses. In our next class, we're still not done with the Bhagavad Gita. So having finished the 18 verses, having finished the Gita Dhyana, we'll conclude our study of the Bhagavad Gita with an overview. So starting, and maybe take 2-3 classes. So we'll go over all 18 verses in brief, and the purpose of that will be to empower you, because chances are, sometime in the future, you'll think, well, didn't Sri Krishna say that in the Bhagavad Gita? Where did he say that? Wouldn't it be nice to know where he's, and be able to look things up? So that's the purpose of our overview, and we'll start that in our next class. Tomorrow, Sunday, we'll have some really nice weather, so we'll sit outside in the picnic area for satsanga. Please come and join us at 6 p.m. Come with your questions. We'll have a nice time sitting out there. We'll conclude now with our brief prayers. You want to push the button for the altar? Yes. Om Gananahan Tva Ganapatigam Avamahe Kaving Gavinam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspatahanashun Vanhutavasida Saranam Om Mahaganapataye Namaha Ishvaro Gururhatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramhanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.